Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news as another Manchester United game falls into jeopardy. Brentford cancelled last night, Brighton on Saturday, hanging in the balance as Manchester United still liaise with the Premier League about the possibility of another game being postponed. Manchester United is believed to have up to 9 first team members missing from, who will be missing from Brighton, who actually missed training today. A big COVID outbreak, but how big is it, and what does it mean for the Premier League in general? We've seen Burnley against Watford get cancelled within 3 hours of the kickoff tonight. So look, these games can just drop at any time. You might wake up on Saturday morning halfway to Manchester and find out the game's been cancelled. I don't think that will happen with United. I think the Premier League will make a decision soon on this one. I personally have got no personal opinion on this. Well, I've got a personal opinion. I've got no knowledge on this. I think United are pushing to get it cancelled. I do think they are trying to get it cancelled, and I think Leicester and Spurs tried to get tomorrow night's game postponed, and the Premier League have said no. So the Premier League are pushing back, but at the end of the day, clubs aren't bothered about what the fans want. Clubs are bothered about winning points because points mean prizes, and obviously, if you've got good players out, you might not win the game, but I suppose it's that balance we were talking about this morning. So let's talk about... So we know Manchester United were in training today. Let's give you a bit of an update of what's going on. Now, 17 players were spotted entering Carrington by the Manchester Evening News today. Goalkeepers-wise, Grant and De Gea. Defenders, Lindelof, Wan-Bissaka, Dalot, Bailly, Varane, Jones and Telles. Midfielders, Fred, McTominay and Bruno. And then attackers, Ronaldo, Ahmad, Rashford, Martial, Cavani. So, look, out of that, you could pick an 11 straight away. You could have De Gea, Dalot, Bailly, Varane, Telles, and then you could have Fred, McTominay, Bruno, Ronaldo, Rashford, Martial. But, is Varane fit? Is Cavani fit? Martial's probably not fit. So, 17 players, you could probably say 3 of those are injured, so that might knock you down to 14. But a lot of players not there. A lot of players not there. Henderson not spotted. Luke Shaw not spotted, Maguire not spotted, Lingard, Van der Beek, Sancho, Greenwood. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 9. Matic and Mata are believed to be have suspected cases of it as well. So you've got 9 first team players, squad members out, leaving you with about 14 first team members. Now, do you play a game against Brighton with 14 first-team players supplemented by youth players, or do you say postpone it and put it back to who knows when? At what point do you draw the line and say, look, you've got to play the game? And I think that was that's a difficult thing for me. Now, Ian said that Matic was training. I don't know whether that was the case. Maybe, and I think there's a bit of leeway each way there. 17 players were spotted. I think 9 or 10 weren't spotted. So maybe more were there, maybe less were there, and that was something Manchester Evening News said. But what I find quite interesting is that I don't think we get the. Matthew Lewis makes an interesting point. Stop testing altogether. That way, if you haven't got symptoms, you don't know whether people have got it anyway. I think the lack of education in football is ridiculous. I tread carefully when talking about this because there is always 2 sides to a story. But we know Mason Greenwood had COVID last month. I don't know why the press don't report this. Mason Greenwood had COVID last month. Like we were told it by Ollie. And yet he's not at training today. How does that work then? Like, I've heard of cases of people catching COVID twice, but he literally had it a month ago, so he's caught it again. Or is it because he's not vaccinated and therefore he's got to self-isolate? And I think this is the thing, like, you're delving into people's private lives effectively because it's a private choice to be vaccinated or not, or whether you've had COVID or not. But United put it out there that Greenwood had COVID a month ago. Why is he not at training today? Surely he hasn't got COVID again in the space of a few weeks. Lingard's had COVID. Where was he today? Henderson's had COVID. Where was he today? Now, obviously, Henderson had it in the summer, so 6 months maybe he's picked it up again. But there is a lack of clarity in relation to, again, I don't blame Manchester United for this. I blame the Premier League. We are being treated like mushrooms again, and people have got plans for the weekend. And I don't think people mind cancelling those plans, but they need to be told ASAP. And, Manchester Evening News did a very good job of photographing as many people as they could today. Did they photograph everyone? Even they said they don't know whether they've done that. Why can't Manchester United, who cancelled a game on Tuesday night, why can't they come out and say, we've got this many COVID cases, and if we get any more, we probably won't play again on Saturday. It's like a game of guess who. We're all playing detective, thinking, well, he had COVID last month. Why is he not training? Surely he's training. It's all over the place, and I think that it's almost like they don't want to put the information out there because they don't want fans to be forearmed with the information. But I don't know. I don't know. COVID's not going anywhere, says Carl. There's no reason to believe this won't continue through the season, so I don't see the benefit of postponing the game. I actually agree with that, Carl. Gaza says fixture congestion. Pogba's had it too. I think Pogba was back at training today, though. Pogba was back at training today. I saw a photograph of Pogba. So Pogba has had COVID and Pogba was back there today. So is that because Pogba's had the vaccine? Is that because Pogba hasn't got COVID? I mean, we just don't know. And you've got to be very careful because, as I said this morning, I don't really give a shit if someone has a vaccine or not. But we have plans for the weekend. Like, we. And I don't know why we're being kept in the dark like mushrooms. Like, just tell us the information so we can form an opinion. My opinion, based on scant information, is that, and James Ducker from The Telegraph has said that 19 people have tested positive for COVID within the Manchester United playing staff and staff, but not all of them are meant to be actual players. So, maybe we can't train them. Maybe we're lacking coach. I mean, we're all playing guesswork here. But what is for certain, everybody who's got COVID ain't going to be back training until next week. So that is a problem, isn't it? But I think I agree with what Carl just said there. I think that we are going to see more and more of this for the next 2 or 3 months. Until we hit the spring, I think we're going to see a lot of COVID cases. So if they allow games to be postponed because people haven't got enough players, this season's going to get postponed. I think that's what we're heading for. I mean, look, I'm doing a watch-along tonight of Arsenal versus West Ham. I'm looking forward to it. I've dropped the link in the video description. I would tune in anyway because I think it might be one of the last matches you watch over Christmas. I think the way it's going, we're going to see a lot of games getting postponed. But I just think, people talk about the integrity of the tournament, and I'm all open to opinion, but people talk about the integrity of the tournament. I spent a year watching a season with no fans in the ground. Manchester City nearly won a quadruple. That's how where's the integrity of the tournament then when Manchester United's treble gets eclipsed by a team playing behind closed doors for a season? So don't talk to me about the integrity of the tournament because I think the integrity of the tournament last year was a joke. I enjoyed it. I'm glad we had football over no football, but football behind closed doors ain't football. I mean, that match of the day when you used to watch that and you could hear, nothing, like a pin drop. It was horrible, but it was better than nothing. So my personal opinion now is that I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I don't think while we're testing and doing everything we do for COVID, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. But I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as it was when it first came along and we all had to go into isolation for 3 months. I don't think we're at that anymore. I think we're getting very close to a point where we're just going to have to live with it. And I think the Premier League needs to adopt something like that. Look, at the end of the day, it's down to each individual club how they speak to their players and get their players to behave responsibly. And I think all players do behave responsibly, but some people are still going to get COVID. In which case, I think the games need to be played. And if you've got 14 first team players and you bring in 4 youth players to be on the bench, then so be it. But I think that's the way to go because otherwise I think we're going to really lose the integrity of the tournament when some people have played. I mean, already Spurs have played 2 games less than everybody else. The integrity of the tournament starts to disappear when you look at the top of the league and such has played 19 games but somebody else has played 13. It's just stupid. So they need to try and keep everything together. We need to start docking wages for the unvaccinated, says Sir Nigel Farage. I disagree with that. I've got no problem with anybody not being vaccinated. It's a personal choice. Don't United have COVID protocols in place? In the NFL, you're either vaxxed or up to you, or you do strict daily testing. Why don't United do this? Says Oz. To be honest, I was speaking to someone this afternoon about this, and R1 says closed doors should happen. I don't know about that. We'll come back to that, playing behind closed doors again. But what's happened in the Premier League is that a year ago, we were basically in lockdown in the UK. No one had been vaccinated. The Delta variant was about, and we went into lockdown for about 3 months after Christmas, just before Christmas until about March time. And throughout that time, United never had a game cancelled. Loads of teams didn't have games cancelled. I know Man City had to isolate for a couple of weeks, but what was happening a year ago is that it was so dangerous to be amongst people that football clubs had their players on lockdown. Basically, they were testing them regularly, and in their private lives, they weren't mixing. We have sort of opened up the doors in the summer and basically, go to the shopping centre, go and see your mates. And footballers quite rightly have done that as well. The problem is now is that I don't think the clubs are prepared for this, and I don't know whether the clubs can get the players to basically become people that just go training, go home, monitor who they're in contact with to keep themselves away from the virus. So that's the problem I think football clubs have got now. They're just not prepared, and they don't have the protocols or safety nets in place that they had a year ago. Therefore, it's a double whammy, a very infectious variant, and playing squads and staff not being as careful as they were a year ago. So it's a double whammy, isn't it? You're going to get more cases, you're going to get more games cancelled. Mark, is the Premier League allowed to do a vaccine mandate for all players and staff? I feel like this may have to be implemented, or frequent testing, says Sebastian. And Oz says, don't United have done that one? To be fair, vaccination cannot prevent getting COVID, but it can make difference between missing a week or a couple of months. Clubs must protect itself, says Arakil. Well, as I said this morning, quite an interesting thing that people might not be aware about. And this is what I suspect might be the case with some of the players that weren't at training today. Especially when you look at some of those players that might not have been at training today, who we suspect have had. Well, we were told they've had COVID. They might have had COVID quite recently, but they still might not be training with United because you have to isolate if you're unvaccinated, if you're in contact with someone who's got COVID. So let's say a player for United who's had COVID in the last few months, they were training on Sunday and another player's got COVID. That player with COVID has to isolate for 10 days, but so does the player who's unvaccinated. This was in the press last night as well. So I suspect United have got players who haven't got COVID but are unvaccinated who are having to isolate for 10 days now. And that's obviously a problem as well, because again, that's a double whammy. You lose the people who've got COVID, but you also lose the people who were unvaccinated because they've got to isolate as well. Maybe that rule needs to be changed. I don't know. So Nigel Farage says unvaccinated will explain Greenwood with England. And so that's where we are with Manchester United at the moment. Quite a large number of players, maybe up to like 10 first team players are currently not training, which leaves us with about 15, 16 players who are training. Is that enough to play Brighton? Up to you. And I think, again, you're not going to get a definitive answer on this, but I do suspect, in my opinion, I don't think that Brighton game's going to happen. Brighton are playing tonight. I suspect, in fairness, if you're Brighton, you play a hard game tonight against Wolves. Do you want to be playing Manchester United on Saturday morning, Saturday lunchtime? They don't want to play us anyway. They want to get that game out of the way and not play a fresh United side. But is it a fresh United side? Is it a weak United side? Maybe Brighton look at it and go, we'll never have as good a chance now as to go up to Old Trafford and get a result. Maybe that's why United are trying to get the game off. They don't want to play it. So we'll have to just wait and see what happens. But I would repeat what I said this morning. The Premier League have got to come out with guidelines. They're never going to get away with going, if you haven't been vaccinated, you can't play football. That would be draconian. But what they can come out and do and say is, if you've got 14 first team players available and 2 of them are goalkeepers, then you play the game and you can supplement it with youth players if you want to. And, that is an option. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if Man United play Brighton on Saturday with 15 first team players, 2 of which are goalkeepers, so that would mean you've got 4 subs, 1's a goalkeeper, so you've got 3 outfield subs and a goalkeeper. You supplement it with a couple of young players, so you've got your 5, 6, 7 subs. You play Brighton, all right, you're weakened, but you play Brighton. Your next game's Newcastle. By the time you play Newcastle, everyone who's been isolating is back anyway. So it's not like we're going to have to do this for weeks and weeks and weeks. Say Miasi is happy. He's got a game tonight. Both Brighton and United will want to postpone it, says Sir Nigel Farage. Yeah, I think they will. And, there are some fans that want to see it postponed as well. What do I think personally? I think it's quite obvious. I'm excited about watching Arsenal West Ham. I watched Man City play Leeds last night. I like watching football, so I really like watching my club play football. And I think to play Norwich last Saturday and then not to play Newcastle until 2 weeks and 2 days after that is a bit too long for me. But we'll see what happens. I personally think the Brighton game, I'm going to err on the side of caution and say that I think that the United clearly want this game to be cancelled. And somebody made a point a few minutes ago. Why do you think Manchester United want this game to be cancelled? Well, why do you think they want it to be cancelled? I don't actually know. I think they want it to be cancelled because they're missing 6 or 7 first team players, first team squad players, and I think that they're worried about losing a game of football. I think that's what it's all about. But other clubs have been in this position. Arsenal at the start of the season had a few out as well. Brighton players might say we don't want to risk getting COVID by playing with United, says Sarvesh. Any other Premier League clubs having these issues, says KCV Music. And I think that's a great point. Like Watford against Burnley has been cancelled tonight because Watford have got a lot of COVID cases. How many? Leicester and Spurs wanted to cancel their game tomorrow because they've got some COVID cases. How many? And that's what we need to know. How many cases means cancellation? How many cases means you play the game? Surely they know by now how many players we've got to play on Saturday. The lack of communication is crazy. Call it off now if they are going to, says John. I agree. And I think that the Premier League wanted Manchester United to play Brentford on Tuesday night. Reading between the lines, they've made Leicester play Spurs tomorrow. They've cancelled Watford Burnley tonight. They've cancelled Manchester United Brentford last night. But I think they had to cancel that game because United didn't train on Monday. United are training today. I don't think United probably wanted to train today. So why are they training today? I think they're training today because the Premier League have said you're playing against Brighton on Saturday unless you get any more COVID cases. So I think the Premier League wanted United to play Brentford, but I think because we didn't train on Monday, quite rightly, they said, okay, well, you're not playing against Brentford, but we want you to play against Brighton. So I think United reluctantly are training, and if they get any more cases, they'll say no. Brief story on why you didn't go pro, says Cesar. Well, I'm not talking about that now. Ask me on the watch along. I'll tell you about that on That's Football in about half an hour. Iraqi says, I agree the Premier League will have a hard time mandating vax, but Telegraph reported clubs are considering adding vax requirement clauses in player contracts. Seems to make sense. Well, yeah, but ultimately, maybe that's a little bit unfair. But look, get your thoughts in. This is a very interesting topic. There is no definitive answer. I certainly only Maguire and Sancho missing from Norwich team, says Sir Nigel Farage. Yeah, so the players that are unaccounted for in relation to training today that are first teamers. I mean, Dean Henderson's not really a first teamer. You can put Grant on the bench. Like, Henderson is not going to be used, is he? So Henderson and Heaton weren't there, but I mean, that's by the by whether they were there or not. Luke Shaw wasn't there, probably wouldn't have played anyway. Mengi doesn't play anyway. Maguire obviously is a first teamer. Lingard hasn't been playing. Van der Beek, well look, Donny is a valuable bench player, but he's not really been playing. Alanga's not been playing. Sancho and Greenwood. So really, Sancho, Greenwood and Maguire are the 3 players that you could say are first teamers. But I don't know. I don't know. I think that I don't think it's difficult. I just think you have an opinion on it and you respect those people who say, I think we should get it cancelled. I respect those people who say, I think we should play. Personally, I think we should play the game. If we've got the same amount of players on Saturday that we've got at the moment, I think we should play the game. But that will be down to the Premier League to decide and not us as fans. But what I also would like to say is that somebody sent me an email today actually, and they said, fair play for being quite even-handed on it. And I think you have to be even-handed on it because the only reason I say Henderson's had COVID, Lingard's had COVID, and Greenwood's had COVID in the last 4 months is because, 6 months with Henderson, is because we've been told that by Solskjaer. He told us in a press conference, so we know that. If we don't know this information, then that's private information, and we shouldn't speculate on that. And as for vaccination, I couldn't give a toss. Like it's a personal choice. I must admit, the night before I got vaccinated with my first jab in the summer, I really didn't think I was going to do it. I was like, I'm not going to do it, and then I did. But it's a personal choice, and I think some people just don't want to do it. But I see people saying, get vaccinated, it will protect you. Well, look, I decided to do it because I believed in that. But I wouldn't even be sanctimonious and arrogant enough to say go and get it, because I don't feel that I think it's a personal choice, and I'm very much somebody who's about that. I mean, how can you run a fan channel from day one that's been about opinion? So look, ultimately I couldn't give two tosses about who's been vaccinated and who's not been vaccinated. What I would like to see is a situation whereby if we've got players who can't train for the next 10 days because they're not vaccinated, then maybe there needs to be some evidence work done on. Because it seems silly to me that if I'm a Man United footballer and Adam's a Man United footballer and Adam's been vaccinated and I haven't, and Levin's a Manchester United footballer and he's got COVID, Levin can't play for United for 10 days because he's got to obviously go away. But then I've got to go away because I'm unvaccinated. But then Adam can stay, even though he's been running around with Levin as well because he's had the vaccine. But what's the evidence? Like, just because he's vaccinated, does that mean he's going to be okay compared to me in relation to spreading it? And you know, maybe there's some with this new, I think with the old variant fine, but with the new variant that might not be the case, you know, because with the new variant they reckon even if you're vaccinated you can still carry the virus. So you know, and they're also saying it's not as potent. I mean, it's very interesting what somebody said at the start, and I do wonder if we'll ever get to this point where we almost say we're not testing anymore. If you've got symptoms, test, and if you've got it, then you take the, you know, you take the isolation. But until you get the symptoms, you carry on as normal. But you know, what do I know? The thing that worries me the most is that where are we heading in 3 months? I mean, we're not even hit winter in the UK. This happened last year, right before Christmas. We got hit by the Delta variant and we went into lockdown for 3 months. Right before Christmas this year, we've been hit by another one, and it sounds like, well, what's going to happen? Like, I think I've heard people talk about a 2-week reset. Let's just not play football for 2 weeks and then everyone can start playing football again. It won't be 2 weeks. It won't be 2 weeks. It'll go on for bloody ages. So I think that, and as for behind the closed doors, I got to be honest here, and again I'll be in the minority. I don't agree with behind closed doors. Lots of people are vaccinated now. They're going to do vaccine passports. Why stop fans coming into the ground? Like, it's a personal choice. I mean, maybe the stadiums won't be as full anyway, but I think that to stop fans being in the ground, that was very much an unvaccinated UK. Like, a lot of people are vaccinated now, and we can have passports, and I don't agree with that. But people will say, well, it's obvious that it's going to spread when you've got 75,000 people in the ground. Yeah, but again, I just think that we need to find ways to live with what we've got. And if that means we put 14 first team players out on Saturday and have 5 youth players, that's a way of carrying on, isn't it? And then by Newcastle, these people who have had to isolate, they'll be back anyway. And maybe we lose 3 or 4 from the current team, but we'll have another 8 players back. So, you know, you don't cancel a game and you keep going. But I don't necessarily have the answers. Hi Mark, I'm so happy to be part of this community for 6 months. Keep up the great content, says Mark Friedman. Thank you very much. Sean Turner says, I ain't vaccinated and I don't judge anyone who is or isn't. I just want to watch football. They just need to make a decision and move forward. Thank you, Sean, and I respect that. And Paul Gould says, under UK law and employment law, you can't force people to have vaccine or not. It's a legal nightmare for EPL. Needs stronger government guidelines or rules. Well, you can't, Paul, but I'm pretty sure Aldi tried to do it. The supermarkets, but yeah, I do think it will be cancelled. I think it's a shame, but I do. And you know, that'll mean 2.5 weeks without a United match, which I don't actually think is very good for us. But you know, I think the Premier League needs to put some guidelines out, and I keep saying this, and you know, we still keep having games cancelled 3 games before. Just a bit of an update. Carrington did open today, but Manchester United remain in talks with the Premier League over the status of their squad ahead of Saturday's game at home to Brighton, who are wrestling with their own COVID outbreak. So you can sort of see where this is going. United are desperately trying to get it cancelled by all accounts, and I'm pretty sure Brighton will back that up. So it'll be down to the Premier League to make a strong decision. But, you know, you've got to have the evidence. You've got to have the evidence. get the evidence. How many players can actually play the match on Saturday? How many players can't? And are we going to start falling into a world whereby they go, well, yeah, we've got 17 players, but Varane's not quite ready to play yet. Cavani's not quite ready to play yet. You know, we have got 6 or 7 out with COVID, but we've got 3 or 4 with little knocks and stuff. You know, there are, you know, I hope we don't start getting into that world. There's a reason for teams to have such big squads and academy players. We are a club, not a bunch of Premier League stars. Clubs play football with or without them, says Mario Franco. And as long as we have available the players that train today, we should play. Premier League needs to stipulate how many need to have COVID to have a game off. Alex Marmon, I don't think they even need to do that. I would do what we discussed on the show last night with Levin and Adam. I would say, if you've got 14 first team players available, 2 of which are goalkeepers, that leaves you with your outfield 11, a goalkeeper and 2 subs. You then supplement that with 4 or 5 youth players from your under 23s and you play the game. You are handicapped, there's no doubt about that. You are severely handicapped in relation to you haven't got your normal 25 first team players to choose from, but you still play the game. But if you did it for every club, then every club's going to be in that situation. Because what I will tell you now, if you don't live in the UK, you might not realise this, we are getting blasted by this new variant. Now, the hope is that it's not going to be severe illness for a lot of people, but we are getting blasted by it. So some people might, well, that's not fair if United lose to Brighton, but Brighton might be in the same boat. Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal might be in the same boat next week. At some point, every Premier League club is going to start having this problem in the next 2 months. So everyone will be in the same position. And that's why I think the Premier League should do that. But what you can't do is have this lack of communication whereby people just don't know. We don't know why Watford got it cancelled 3 hours before kickoff. The drive from Watford to Burnley is about 3 hours, and maybe a little bit more in traffic at that time. There will be Watford fans who have driven up the motorway and are driving back now because that game has been cancelled 3 hours before kickoff. That's unacceptable. Forget Manchester United fans going to the match. That's unacceptable on any level. What was the communication between Watford and the Premier League? Because I'm as interested in that as I am Manchester United. Because, you know, Watford Football Club, Manchester United Football Club couldn't give a shit about Watford, what their tactics are, who their manager is, who their footballer are. But what I do care about is how many people at Watford have had coronavirus or have coronavirus. How many of them can't play? Is it the same again? Watford have lost 5 players, but they've lost another 6 players because they're unvaccinated and they've got to isolate, so they've lost 11 players. What's the breakdown of it? How is it happening? How many players did they have available today? What's the situation with Manchester United? Why have Leicester and Spurs got to play tomorrow? How many have they got out? And we don't get this information, and yet they have this information. So basically, the only way around that, whilst protecting people's private lives, and footballers have got every right to be protected as well, if the Premier League just come out and say, right, your first team squad, I want a list of your first team squad for every club. With Man United, they'll probably give you 26, 27 names. Watford might give you 20. Right, okay. From those players, every single Premier League club has to give their first team squad. And the Premier League can query it if they, you know, if a team goes, we've only got 15, and then, you know, the Premier League can go, where's Mata, where's Matic, where's this, where's that. So the Premier League don't need to be stupid about it, but give us a list of every Premier League first team player you've got in your squad. Right. We've looked at it, we've averaged it out, and the requirement is if 14 of them are fit and you've got 2 goalkeepers, you play the game and you supplement it with youth players. That's what you do. Then we never need to know about who's got COVID, who's not got COVID, who's vaccinated, who's not. We never need to know. Because if a game gets postponed, we'll know the opposition didn't even have 14 outfield players. So that's the thing. That's the thing. But they don't seem to want to do it. It's too practical, says Daniel. But yeah, you know what? I've been doing this for 7 years. I've been interacting with you people for 7 years. You know, not all of you, but you always get interesting and good conversation from you. And then the powers that be, I don't know what jobs you've done in your life, but I've had this all my life. I've worked in really professional jobs. I've worked in cheese factories. Not saying it's not professional there, but it's a little bit different to some of the other jobs I've done. And most of the time, it's the people on the shop floor who've got the intelligence and are the creative, you know, problem solvers. It's the people in the bloody offices upstairs who are absolutely incompetent. And, you know, I wasn't happy that the Man United game got cancelled, but I actually sort of agree when you don't train the day before that it's going to get cancelled. I think it's appalling that Watford-Burnley has been called off at 5 o'clock when they're meant to be kicking off at 8 o'clock. Bloody appalling. So what's going on? Jake says, any news on Lindelof? Last I heard, he was wearing a heart monitor and all seemed okay. Well, apparently he was there today. He was training today. So I don't know whether... I mean, to be honest with you, Lindelof should play on Saturday if we play the game, because if he's training, you've either got a problem or you haven't. Well, if he hasn't got a problem, then he can play. Obviously, that problem was suspected to be around his chest. If they've done all the tests and he's fine, he's a fit sportsman, you just play the game, don't you? So, yeah, hopefully he's okay, Jake. And thing is, if we had 10 players with knocks, we'd still have to play, says Alex. Well, no, you know, there's grey areas, mate. You know, if you've got 14 outfield players and 2 goalkeepers in that 14 to play against Brighton, but 2 of those players are Anthony Martial and Rafael Varane, I think you've got a case to get the game called off, because Anthony Martial actually isn't match fit and Varane hasn't played for, 2 months. So I think, mitigating circumstances there, but it's communication. It's always about communication. And the one thing that always happens in football, and has been happening in football since the induction of the Premier League, is that football fans who make football what it is, a brand, whether it's Adidas or whoever, they're not interested in Manchester United. They're interested in you buying things with Adidas and Manchester United on. So it's fans they're interested in. Sky are interested in you, and BT are interested in you and Beyond, and all these other people are interested in DAZN. They're all interested in you because you're paying them the subscriptions to watch Manchester United. And Manchester United are interested in you because if you don't go to the ground and buy a ticket or buy the tracksuits or whatever like that, then they don't make money. But in football, we get treated we are the lifeblood of football. Football fans are the lifeblood of football, but we get treated like mushrooms in the dark and fed on shit. We don't get communicated to. The Super League, transfers, how your club's being run, game cancellations. It's just like, oh, don't worry about them. They'll just put up with it. And I think it's wrong. I think, football fans should be communicated with. And that Watford one today is appalling. Thoughts on if a manager gets COVID-19? Well, I think that's a great point by Jeremiah. That is a great point. We've never had that before. Well, I think we have had it. But if a manager gets COVID-19, does that mean the game gets cancelled? Sometimes you have a, stadium ban for being sent off. I don't necessarily think that that's enough to get a game cancelled. But it's not. It's never hard to solve a problem if you've got procedures and protocols in place. It's always hard to solve a problem when you're winging it. And it feels to me like the Premier League are winging it at the moment, and therefore it's a mess. And they'll get accused of favouritism and all sorts. But because Newcastle, Spurs and Leicester want their game cancelled tomorrow, and they'll be saying, well, you did it for United. But there probably is a reason why the Premier League are saying you've got to play. And it's probably because they've got more players available. I don't know, but it's not been communicated. What I mean is if 10 of our players are out long term with normal injuries, we wouldn't be able to get it called off. But with COVID, we can for some reason, says Alex. Yeah, I see what you mean. But, we'll see. So where we're at the moment is that Manchester United are currently back in training. 17 first team players trained today in varying different ways. And up to 10 didn't train. Now, they haven't all got COVID. Some of them will be having to isolate because they're not vaccinated under the rules that we've got at the moment. But Man United are pushing to get this game postponed, and I think Brighton are as well. So you have to, at the moment, suspect that they will get their way on this because they did on Brentford. However, I think the Premier League are pushing to get this game go ahead. And at the end of the day, it's like whether you'd play Rashford or Greenwood up front. If you think the game should go ahead, that's your opinion. If you think it should be postponed, that's your opinion. Personally, I think if we've got the players that we've got at the moment and we supplement them with youth players, the game should be played. If we lose any more people, then the game shouldn't be played. And the same goes for Brighton as well. But we'll see what happens. What I would hope is that we've got the preview at 2 o'clock tomorrow. I don't want to be previewing another game going, if it happens, let's find out quickly, because I know people who've flown in from around the world for Brentford and Brighton games, and they've already flown in and they missed the Brentford game, and the Brighton game they might miss as well. So I hope it goes ahead for their sakes, but ultimately let's get it done earlier this time. let's get it done earlier. Anyway, not a lot else to talk about at the moment because that's where we are. We will be back with the morning show, of course, tomorrow, where we'll have some transfer stuff and stuff for you as well. But you could recall your loan players. Recall Twansibi and Ghana. Maybe that's what everyone should do, especially if they're in the Championship, because the Championship's going to shut down. Maybe people should recall. That's not a bad point. Recall your loan players. But yeah. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe. I've dropped the link in the video description for the watch along. I'm going to be live in about 5 minutes for the watch along. Arsenal versus West Ham. If you like football, it might be worth watching the watch along, because it might be one of the last games you watch over Christmas. Who knows where we're going with this? But Arsenal versus West Ham is happening, and it's a big game for United, because if West Ham are already ahead of us. If Arsenal win, we drop down a place. So hopefully a draw today. But Twitch will be at 11 o'clock tonight as well. That's exclusive as well. I'll let you know that on That's Football. But I'll be live on That's Football in 5 minutes. I've dropped the link in the video description. Take care. I'll speak to you all in a bit.